Hello again, everyone. It's MrMostDaysOff.
And I'm the WizKid.
And we're here to talk about PopThreads.com, our newest sponsor and your online destination for all pop culture t-shirts. And right now, for our listeners, they are offering 10% off just by using the discount code Simpsons at checkout.
Woohoo!
They have some awesome Simpsons shirts. They've also got other things like old school Nickelodeon, my favorite, Legends of the Hidden Temple, and they've got us wrestling fans covered.
They also have up to the current season t-shirts from TV shows like Game of Thrones and The Walking Dead. So make sure you head over to popthreads.com right now.
Use that discount code Simpsons
so you can save a lot of dope!
Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to the Best Darn Diddly Review Show. My name is Miles, better known as Mr. Most Days Off, and I am back again to talk about The Simpsons. Today we've got a couple more classics. We've got actually two really awesome episodes, Saturdays of Thunder and Flaming Moe's. Real quick, before we get any further into this podcast, PopThreads.com has bumped our 10% off all the way to 20% off for the month of February only. So there's still time to act. Go to PopThreads.com, use that Simpsons code at checkout, and you'll save 20% off your order. But enough plugging. Let's get into The Simpsons. I need my co-host with the most, Richie the WizKid. How are you today, Rich?
I'm just happy I can save a lot of dough. Thank you, Pop Threads, again for your support. But yes, Saturdays of Thunder, I've always remembered that episode pretty much exactly the way it was. It's not one of my favorites, but it's still pretty decent. But Flaming Moe, I mean, come on, that's a classic Simpsons episode. But we're going to get into that. I'll throw it back to you, the man, the myth, the Mendoza! It is Miles.
Oh, actually, I have something fun to talk about when we get to that part. So let's just dive right in right now. First episode we're talking about, like Richie said, is Saturdays of Thunder. It debuted on November 14th of 1991. So wrapping up the year 91, getting real close to 92. The chalkboard gag was "I will not fake rabies," which some of these they have that effect where like you read them and you can't help but just get a mental image of Bart actually doing this act, and I literally laughed out loud when I read this. I gave it just an audible chuckle, if you will.
Wait, I thought there was wasn't there like a big rabies scare back in the 90s too?
You know, honestly, it probably was relevant because The Simpsons is, or more likely, this actually predated a big rabies outbreak.
So Simpsons did it?
That happened because The Simpsons always get that thing early, right? Yeah, it's the whole
they
thing.
Always call it.
The couch gag on this one, I believe, is new. The family all jumps into the couch, and actually they fold up into the couch as if they were the bed portion, essentially, in a fold-out couch. It was weird, it was bizarre, but I liked it.
Great analysis there.
We open up with another episode of I Can't Believe They Invented It with Troy McClure, and it was actually voiced by Phil Hartman, so that's automatically a plus. We see that they are advertising a new product from the makers of things like the Foam Dome, the Rocket Walker, and the Mr. Sugar Cube. I love that Homer immediately after seeing this reaches over to the bowl beside the table and is like, "That baby changed our lives."
All the sugar cubes like old and deformed.
Well, and they poured like a bag of sugar and got like 4 cubes out, dude. Those are some condensed,
That
dense
is a
cubes.
diabetic nightmare waiting to happen.
That if you don't have diabetes, it'll give it to
That
you.
should be their tagline.
That really should be.
What I love is I really felt like this is the first, I can't believe they invented that, where it feels like the real thing. You know, they've done it a few times. They've done it sometimes without the real Phil Hartman doing it, but this one really felt like the classic, like this is what I want to see when Troy McClure pops up on screen.
Well, I just love how dirty it is. Like all of the little tricks they use to try to sell, like the way that they have the crowd like obviously working with them. It is a perfect spoof of those like late night or daytime TV ads that you would always see. Like this brings me back to like summer when you're off of school and in your head you've got this fantasy that the morning cartoons just last all day. But in reality, it gets to be about 11 a.m. or so, and all of a sudden all the good shows end, and all it is telenovelas and fucking these things selling shit.
I almost said Jerry Springfield.
Jerry Springer? Yeah.
I remember those days.
And then at night, of course, you got the boobs, so that was at least something to look forward to. But during the daytime, it was all just bullshit like this.
But right now, we've got actor Troy McClure, who you might remember him from such TV series as Buck Henderson Union Buster and Troy and Company's Super Time Smile Factory.
And he's joined once again by Dr. Nick Riviera, and he's plugging away for his new product, Spiffy, which I love. They use Edgar Allan Poe's grave to demonstrate how well
Where
this
did they get
product
his
works.
tombstone?
With hundreds of years of neglect to have tarnish or have stuff to wipe off.
I think Troy McClure even says, "Quoth the Raven, let them shine," or something like that.
Also, right there in that same spot, Dr. Nick actually says when after he gets done demonstrating, "This grave is so shiny you'll think the body's still warm." The sad thing, though, is I love, too, the transition here. It goes back to Homer, and Homer is a sucker for all of this. Like, he instantly falls for all of the crowd complaining about the price being too high. So he's like, well, tell you what, I'll cut the price in half, and if you order right now, I'll give you 2 of them, or whatever it is. He throws in some extra bottles, and he knocks off $10, and Homer's just like, oh, I can't afford not to buy it now.
I thought it was something else, too, like a Jell-O mold pan or something. It was some random thing they threw.
It's always some random stupid thing that doesn't, like, you fucking order, like, an aquarium setup, and they throw in a free nose trimmer for whatever reason. Like, it was always weird shit like that on those ads.
What I thought was a little odd about this episode is they actually had Homer in like his regular walking around the house clothes here. Most of the time throughout the series he'll always have his typical white shirt on, but in this scene he actually had like the white wife beater, which he rarely wears just like laying about the house clothes unless they're doing something where it's too hot outside or something like that. But it was a little weird to me that he was just wearing like a wife beater for the first few moments in this episode.
That's kind of what I usually look like walking around the house, so
that's what I always look like, but I'm just saying it was weird to me, like animation wise, that sometimes it seems like they try to give them different outfits.
Unfortunately, Homer's lounging day gets interrupted when the door knocks and Marge yells out, "Homer, please get the door, it's my sisters." Never a way to put Homer in a good mood.
He's got backup though, because Maggie's been with him the entire time, and when she hears a knock at the door, she jumps down and she follows Homer when he's walking away. So if I've got to have backup, that's probably the first person I'm going to call.
Magical Maggie.
Absolutely. Maybe she was strengthening him to walk to the door. I don't know. It takes a lot of effort for Homer.
So Homer puts his game face on, much like we talked about last week with like the waiting tables thing, or if that wasn't last week, it was in the last couple weeks. But like how servers kind of put on their smile as they get the door. Homer does the exact same thing. He starts smiling as he cracks the door open, and he is as friendly as he can muster, and Patty and Selma, of course, are just like, huh, he's wearing pants. I guess I owe you lunch.
Which, again, pajama clothes when you're lounging around the home, so I can see where that might be a good bet to take.
You know, honestly, you know this about me, but if you're ever in a situation where you're betting on if I'm wearing pants, you're probably better off going with the no column, frankly.
But it is going to happen at least once in your life. I know this coming up in November, we have some kind of event where you were told you had to wear pants. And it wasn't even your wife that said that.
Shout out to our awesome friend Kiera and her bride-to-be Charlie. We love you guys. We're excited for your wedding coming up in November.
We're both going to be part of the bridal party, too.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. And he's got some of his old friends that are going to be maidsmen. I don't know. Groomswomen, I guess. I don't know. It's going to be fun. These crazy millennials.
They've had a lot of fun looking at Simpsons action figures over the trip they just recently took, too. By recently, it was months and months ago, but I saw the pictures online where they were literally in this room full of Simpson toys at some toy museum. It looked really awesome.
Yeah, it was a really cool picture. Kira, you're on Instagram. Put that shit up for us. Tag us. Anyway, moving back to Saturdays of Thunder, Patty and Selma immediately start talking hairstyles with Marge. Patty or Selma basically are pointing at pictures, and they're like, what about this one? And Marge looks down and is like, you mean the Ed Asner? That she immediately corrects and says, no, the Mary Tyler Moore. Which, sadly, we're recording this on the 31st, and Mary Tyler Moore passed away less than a week ago.
Yeah.
So,
We lost her. We lost John Hurt this week, too. Like, it's 2016's rolling over on that stuff.
2017 hasn't gotten the message that 2016 ended, apparently. So, but yeah, the lovely Mary Tyler Moore, who I actually used to watch her show on Nick at Night when I was a kid. I mean, her show is way, way older than I am, but I was able to catch reruns in syndication and always got a laugh about her antics being a woman in the workplace in the 70s. Haha.
I almost ha-ha'd, but I felt like that was inappropriate.
So the entire time Homer had been watching TV, Bart had actually been coming by asking questions about various tools in the garage. And it turns out when Marge starts talking to Homer, they hear the power tools going off, and Marge is like, "What is that? Who's using the tools?" Homer replies, "I don't know, some guy, I guess."
Which, if you heard your tools going off in your garage, you'd still be like, who the hell's using my stuff? But TV's got him in a trance, so...
The TV has him in a trance. In fact, when Marge leaves with her sister, she's concerned that he's not spending any time with the kids and suggests that he does, in fact, do something with them, and he agrees. And unfortunately, Lisa overhears and holds him to it. He asked her, "What is the easiest, cheapest, and fastest thing I can do with you?" And Lisa is like, "I guess take us to the video store."
What I like is when they're passing Bart in the garage. They're going out to get in the car to go to the video store, and Bart's out there welding, and Homer yells at him and goes, "Bart, you can't weld with such a little flame." He's not concerned that he's welding. He's basically making fun of him.
No, he's never going to get it done with that little tiny fire. And this is obviously painting the picture that Homer is a relatively absentee father, despite the fact that he is literally under the same roof with them. He is completely oblivious to what's happening.
Which, how many times in this series, this is such a reoccurring theme where they go back to this time and time again, where they're basically saying Homer needs to spend more time with his kids. He's already proven that in his own way he can be a good father every now and then, but they're going to keep testing him on it.
That's very true. Regardless, Homer takes Lisa to the video store, as he was more or less forced to do because he ended up promising in a daze in front of her. And they arrive, and none other than McBain is on TV. You know how, well, you used to work at a Blockbuster, so you know exactly how it is. When you go to the video stores, for those people that are listening that don't understand the concept of what a video store is, they're these relics from the 90s that people actually used to travel to, where there would just be floor-to-ceiling shelves of, at one time, VHS tapes, and then eventually DVDs and Blu-rays. And you would basically give them money and take their videos to watch for a few days, and then you return them a few days later. There was kind of a big thing for a while where one of those companies got in trouble for charging people a lot of fees. And eventually it was an antiquated model that got dominated by the internet.
To be fair, I know the way the general public looked at late fees. I mean, we can be honest about this. I used to work for a video store, and I'm telling you right now, about 95% of the time that all of you people out there in rental land had late fees, it's because you actually had late fees. I'll give you 5% of the time there was an actual issue that came up, but I'm telling you right now, when it says that the movies are due by the end of the day or by noon, you actually had a couple hours of grace period on top of that, and most of the time it's just because you people were so lazy you couldn't get them back on time.
Whoa, don't say you people.
All you people. All you non-employees working in a rental store people. Most of the time it was your own damn fault. I'm sticking up because you never get to hear it from the other side. I had a customer complain to me for 20 minutes once towards the end of the road there for a certain ticketed logo company. I had a customer bitch at me for 20 minutes about a penny late balance. And this is at the point where we were told if anyone complains about any late fee, just take it off because we need all the business we can get. That was the only time I didn't take the balance off. Because you complained about a 1 cent late fee when you had the movie for almost 30 days after it was due. That is not my fault that you are that lazy.
I love that you're still defending the company that's long dead and gone.
Oh no, they were jerks. I worked there for 5.5 years and I only got one raise, and it's because they couldn't afford to give us raises, and I had to take a promotion to get the raise. So no, I'm complaining about how people come together in masses and just have this. It's false info. Oh, it's alternative facts. It's alternative facts, or alternate facts, or whatever it is. Just because the general masses thinks a certain way, and you get this mob mentality that this is the way things are, doesn't mean that everyone should actually follow it. And it doesn't mean it's necessarily the truth either. And I'm not leaning one way or the other on that. I'm just saying, in the case of rental stores, people should have turned shit in on time.
You heard the fake news here first. Regardless of your belief on video store policies from the 90s, what we do know is when they arrive at this video store, much like they used to in like Blockbusters back in the day, they had new release movies playing on TVs around the store to kind of advertise what they've got going on. And in this case, it was, of course, McBain. There's kind of a, I guess, funny but kind of sad at the same time, where McBain's partner is talking about as soon as they catch Mendoza, he's going to retire, and he's bought a boat called the Live Forever, and he's going to retire with his beautiful wife and just sail the seas and presumably live forever. And right then, the bartender or one of the waiters, somebody who was undercover, essentially shot the shit out of this guy like 100 times.
The imagery set up on that, just the live forever and everything, just speaking like from a literary point of view, is such a terrible setup right there.
Oh, God.
It's
well,
beautiful.
And like the scene at the end, too, and he's like dying, and he reaches out to McBain like with the picture with him and his wife on the Live Forever, and is like, just make sure you get Mendoza for me, die. Like, yeah, it's great. So, fun fact about McBain that I am just barely going to dip into right now due to the fact that I just learned this, and I feel it needs more research, but by the next time we see McBain, I will try to have some more information. But I just want to plant this idea now. Apparently, according to the magic of the internet, I have learned that if you cut every clip from McBain from The Simpsons together, you actually have a full McBain movie. Now, the clips are not in order, but there's actually been fans online who have apparently cut together the McBain movie to actually have a plot, a beginning, middle, and end, a full-fledged McBain story to tell. And I am really fascinated by this concept.
I want to watch this movie. Like I said,
that's all I know for now, but to be continued on the Best Darn Diddly Review show in the future.
I really want to see this movie. I think it'd be a lot of fun.
Regardless of that, Homer gets asked by the video store clerk if he wants to rent the new McBain movie, and he's like, rent it? I've just seen all the good parts. Why would I rent it? And he laughs in his face as he goes to look for another film.
To be fair, yet again, in a rental store policy, you would never see that clip. You might see like glimpses of it, but you would never see that actual clip in a rental store because the guy gets shot up and there's blood everywhere.
Oh yeah, you have to keep like a PG rating on everything, right?
There was one point where they told us we were only allowed to play G-rated movies, so all of us really sarcastic asshole employees would play like Jaws and the original what's that John Wayne, they just redid it a few years back,
True Grit.
Yeah, but the original versions of the movies are G, so we could, or PG, one or the other, so when they only let us do that, we would be assholes and just play those movies.
In the 80s they invented the PG-13 rating, and there's actually a lot of films that kind of slid under the radar for a little bit that still slid on that PG rating.
Yep.
Kind of an interesting story, actually, to be told there. There's some good YouTube documentaries on the subject.
What rating would you give our program?
I don't believe in ratings, man.
Oh, God.
The MPAA can't judge us.
We'll judge them first.
Yeah, something like that.
NC-17.
But we get another example of selfish Homer when he finds the football's greatest injuries video he was looking for, and immediately is like, all right, Lise, time to go. Lisa's still looking for the film that she wants, which was a Happy Little Elves movie of some sort, and Homer's just like, all of these movies are great. Just grab one and let's get out of here.
Well, to be fair, I thought that video was also one of Maggie's favorites, too, so Homer's screwing over two of his kids at the moment.
Selfish Homer. They get back home and Homer's watching his video. I love the bit they do where they're talking about the player, the Gazelle, and he was so graceful running down the field, and it was really funny because they had him doing like handsprings and stuff.
He looks like a ballerina almost.
Like more, yeah, kind of like a ballerina meets a gymnast sort of movements. Until the fateful day when another player basically broke his neck in half, is what it looked like.
They basically face masked him and turned his head to the side.
Yeah. Patty and Selma return with Marge. They both have their new haircuts, and Selma, or Patty, I can't remember which, actually does have the Mary Tyler Moore, which is kind of funny.
Yeah.
While Marge was out with her sisters, though, they had a lot of discussion about parenting, and specifically, is Homer a good father? Marge believes in him. Patty and Selma obviously don't, but they convinced Marge to give Homer a parenting test. It has 4 questions on it. Homer doesn't do so well. The first question is, can you name some of Bart's friends? Which,
you name one of your child's friends.
and he's like, sure, there's the fat kids with the thing. And then there's a little wiener that always has his hands in his pocket.
And then doesn't Marge ask him for an actual name?
She does. Marge is like, Homer, I think they're looking for an actual name. And he's like, Hank Jones. Marge points out that he made that up, and they move on to the next question, which is, can you name one of your kids' heroes? Homer immediately yells out Steve McQueen. Marge reminds him that that's his hero, which, for what it's worth, Steve McQueen was an actor in the 60s and 70s. He was actually born in 1930 and lived until 1980. Like I mentioned, in the 60s, he became an actor, and he actually had kind of an anti-hero persona that really connected with the counterculture in America. He went on to be known as the King of Cool.
Definitely, there's a lot of older generation people that think Steve McQueen is their hero. I mean, if you watch Pawn Stars, they talk about it all the time. The main guy, Rick, or whatever his name is, he always talks about Steve McQueen. So it's very... The Homer generation is very much a Steve McQueen-based fan base. So it makes sense what I'm saying.
Then Marge asks Homer to name one of Bart's hobbies. He says that he always likes to chew on that foam fort of his. And Marge is like, Homer, he hasn't done that since he was 2. And then they also have a 4th question.
They get to that, but it's at the end of the episode. After they talk about hobbies, and Homer can't name one, Marge points out that your son's in the garage working on a hobby right now. So Homer decides to actually get up and go check for himself.
Oh yeah, you're right. There is a 4th question, but they don't actually reveal it yet. They just say that after Homer goes to the garage and sees Bart is in fact working on a soapbox derby car. There's a great line here actually. When he comes out, he's still defending his test that he's just taken. He's like, Bart, do you have any hobbies? And Bart's like, no, I don't think so. Homer's originally kind of like, yeah, that's what I thought. And he starts to walk away. He's like, wait a second, what are you doing right now?
Which, you got to give Homer a little bit of father credit here. Marge said, your son's in the garage doing something right now. You should go look. And I think typically a selfish Homer might not want to do it. And it may be a selfish reason because maybe he wants to prove everybody wrong that he is a good father. But still, this is the first step to him in this episode of getting on the father bandwagon, or the father soapbox racer, so to speak.
That's a fair point. I think, though, you nailed it when you said he's still doing it for selfish reasons, trying to...
That's what he's always doing.
Prove his innocence. Yeah, of course.
It's the Homer 101 class here.
I love Bart's reply, too, when Homer and Bart have their exchange, where he's like, wait a second, what are you doing right now? Bart says he's building a soapbox racer. Homer's like, well, that's a hobby. And Bart replies, oh, so it is.
So see, they're cut from the same cord, basically.
Yeah, they really are. Like father, like son, for sure. Homer is really upset, though, because unfortunately this little encounter did in fact prove him wrong. He starts crying about how he's a bad father, and Patty and Selma remind him that he's fat, too, so he cries about that as well. Oh, that's fucking hilarious. Also hilarious, Homer calls the institute that put out the parenting quiz that he took, and he lets them know that he got a 0. While he was on hold, though, the music was Cat in the Cradle, which just is the worst song to play if you're having any sort of issues with your father. The institute freaks out. They're like, you got a 0? They put everything on hold, and they immediately rush out to scoop up Homer. It cuts to the garage again, where Bart is kind of showing off his boxcar, or soapbox derby car, to his friends. And they come and they fetch Homer, and as they're dragging him out, they say something along the lines of, or Milhouse says something along the lines of, "Hey, Bart, I think they're finally hauling your dad away." And Bart just replies, maybe it's for the best.
No sympathy for the weak.
While Bart's talking in the garage, he mentions that his hero, his role model, Ronnie Beck, who's like a 5-time or 7-time boxcar derby racing or soapbox derby car racer, he recommends that you go to poorly guarded construction sites as they're a gold mine for material.
Amen, sister.
Martin comes up during this chat as well and starts kind of backhanded complimenting Bart's racer and then kind of casually mentioning that he's also going to be competing. He needs to get going because he's scheduled some time in the wind tunnel.
The funny part is, if Homer wouldn't have called the Institute, he could have stayed in the garage and learned like 5 of Bart's friends' names right then and there.
He would have already been a quarter of the way to a perfect score, right?
Yeah, exactly.
He would have been, or a quarter of the way to being a perfect father, as he puts it later. When Homer does arrive at the Institute, he kind of at first, everything is like ridiculously high tech and kind of silly because they've got like father and son pairings all hooked up to all these like electrodes and x-rays, and one experiment is even a underwater fathering, which goes terribly here in a moment when a shark actually eats them both. And I love the guy's like, not again!
Dear God, not again!
Right? But while they're there, Homer is kind of questioning their credentials, essentially. Is like, well, where's your son? And turns out he was right there. In fact, he was the one working on that shark tank. They give him a copy of a book that they think is really going to help, which is a copy of Fatherhood by Bill Cosby. And Homer's like, wow, if he's as smart as he is funny, I can't wait. This is one of a couple of times that they kind of make a little nod to the Cosby Show in this episode.
Well, the book's actually going to help him a little bit too, though, so...
Maybe Bill Cosby knows a thing or two. I like, too, after Homer kind of asks the scientists about their relationship and how, they get along so well and whatnot, they mention, Homer, this isn't going to be easy. It takes a lot of hard work. And Homer replies with, well, I've never been afraid of hard work, which you're kind of scratching your head at. Then they're like, are you willing to do what it takes for your boy? And Homer's just like, what boy? Again, Homer is just a mess.
Yeah, he's selfish too.
But he comes up with the idea that since Bart is working on a soapbox car, he can go and help him out. And the Institute is like, that is a great idea. You should go and do that. So Homer offers his help to Bart, but unfortunately Bart doesn't really want Homer's help. And when Homer kind of gives him a pseudo resume by naming all of the things that he's built around the house, such as the spice rack, which is crooked and falling down, the birdhouse, which would be absolutely condemned if it were a human house, and finally the gymboree outside for Maggie, which I love. Maggie's actually sitting on it, and probably at least arguably evidence that Maggie's magical. The whole thing collapses while she's standing on it, and she doesn't get hurt.
Or maybe that's some of the Homer Unbreakable genes in her.
Could be. But yeah, while they're there, they hear a crash, and Homer's just like, what's that? Oh my god, and then Homer has to actually reverse psychology himself in order to reverse psychology Bart into letting him help.
Homer pulls out the book by Bill Cosby and opens up a random page, and it says that if your kid says, or if you want your kid to do something, tell them the exact opposite. So Homer is in his brain talking about, oh, it's reverse psychology. He's like, oh, that's probably not going to work. Oh, okay, and so I'll show you. So he reverse psychologies himself into telling Bart, okay, fine, yeah, I don't want to help work on your soapbox racer anyways. And then Bart says, oh, Dad, if you really want to, I mean, you can. So the book's already paid off, and he only read one page.
And I love that joke right there, too, when Homer yells out, thanks a lot, Bill Cosby. You saved The Simpsons, which is obviously a reference to The Simpsons being paired up with the Cosbys on Thursday nights. That's great.
What I like is it does a little montage then of them working on the soapbox racer. And I love the little moment where they actually take a wheel off Maggie's stroller to put it on the soapbox racer.
And also Homer sets down the blowtorch right
Yeah.
next to a gas tan. God. But yeah, the Maggie thing, actually, I'll be honest, I feel like I'm stretching on this one, but I did have the thought that maybe, just maybe, Bart's wheels binded up right before the finish line later because Maggie was upset that they stole her wheels.
Or she was going to prove that Homer was a good father by putting him through turmoil first. She always knows what she's doing behind the scenes.
She's the brains of the operation.
Yep.
After a powerful montage, we get the debut of the Little Lightning, which is not the most impressive looking of soapbox cars, especially when we look at the Honor Roller built by Martin and dedicated to the NASA space program. Also, Nelson's car, the Roadkill 2000, which looks like a soapbox car that a bully would drive. I also really like that Nelson gets scolded for smoking in the pits.
Yeah.
Oh, and then he puts the cigarette on it. He puts the cigarette out on his tongue.
Yeah.
Oh my God, yeah.
Little Lightning might be more of a metaphor of the name on how quickly it was built as opposed to how sturdy it is.
True.
I like that the guy running the race points out that, we don't want you to have your parents help you, but maybe you should have in this case.
Yeah, he tells Bart he should have at least consulted his dad, and Homer's just like, no!
I also like how they ask Bart where his helmet is, and he says, I don't wear a helmet, man. And the guy's going over the rules where it's like, when you basically have to, and Homer steps in and he says, if my son doesn't want to wear a helmet, then he's not going to. The guy's like, whatever, I want to get out of here.
Homer, you're a hell of a father. Well, the race doesn't go so well for Bart. It kind of goes well for Martin. Martin actually sets a record. Unfortunately, though, his chute doesn't deploy, and he was going so fast that his soapbox derby car actually hit the barrier and burst into flames. He was immediately hauled off in an ambulance.
But the funny part about that part, though, is the car catches on fire, and Martin gets out of it running away on fire. And when the fire truck shows up, they're putting out the fire on the car, but without even paying any attention to Martin, who is literally burning alive.
I didn't catch that. And all he ended up with was a broken arm. Yeah. He's actually quite lucky. Yeah. Meanwhile, Nelson strolls across comfortably in second place, and Bart is getting close to the finish line, and he just comes to a dead stop. A DNF.
Aww.
They go to visit Martin in the hospital, and Martin kind of comes together with Bart, who had already showed solidarity earlier when he told Bart, look, man, I don't care which one of us wins as long as Nelson doesn't win. Martin even offered to let Bart drive his car, which, since Martin qualified but has a broken arm, he wouldn't be able to drive himself. Bart actually kind of gives a somewhat touching little short speech about how, his dad and him have been bonding and it would break his dad's heart and he couldn't do that because of how hard they've worked together. But on the other hand, he'll do it. He has to go and break it to Homer, and Homer is about to tell him, like, all right, son, we're going to pull you out of school for a few weeks so that we can get better at this.
Great parenting again.
Bart has to tell Homer that he doesn't want to drive their car. It's slow, it's ugly, and it handles like a shopping cart.
Which paints a very perfect picture. I've been doing a lot of my own shopping here recently, but it seems like every time I pick the damn shopping cart, I pick the worst one that rattles and oddly veers to the right. So when he said that, I immediately started laughing because I knew exactly what he meant.
Why do all shopping carts veer to the right? I never get a cart that veers to the left. It's always to the right. Maybe that's just me.
Or maybe they have, there's a factory that makes front left, and back right shopping cart tires. And the company that makes the front right one is the Canadian company where they make them squares instead of circles if you're a South Park fan. So that's why they all do that, I guess.
Nice. Speaking of Canadians, shout out to the Wrestle Nerds who will be joining us here in just a few weeks to talk about Homer at the Bat and also the one where Bart's dog becomes a police dog. I can't think of what that one's called, but they'll be here for both of those episodes here in just a few short weeks.
That's going to be a lot of fun. I was going to say, I also like in that scene where he's breaking the news to Homer, And he says, "Dad, you taught me to win." And Homer says, like,
"When did I teach you that?"
Yeah, and Bart says, "I don't know, I picked it up somewhere."
I love that too. And then we get a somewhat sad moment, though, because when Bart walks away, Homer's like depressed, and he's like, "For one brief, shining moment, I had a son."
Oh.
Lisa comes up to him and wants to be taken to the doctor's office for a tetanus shot because it's coming into season or whatever. She wants to be prepared. And I love Homer's kind of like whiny response. He's like, "Sure, I'll take you. I'll sit there and I'll worry about you. I'll wait on you. And then you'll just end up going home with somebody who has a faster car."
The best part about that is in the scene when they're driving to the doctor's office, Bart's literally in Martin's car and zooms past Homer when he's driving.
That's one of the better visual gags in the show.
Yeah, I think he even goes, "Don't!" when he drives past him.
Speaking of Martin, when they get to the doctor's office,
oh my god,
Homer actually sees Martin there and he screams out, "Homewrecker!"
He goes, "You, homewrecker!" Which again is a couple, like the visual gag immediately followed up with like the spoken gag. It's just like a 1-2 punch, and it's just, I mean, they're hitting their stride pretty well here in season 3. They're starting to get into gear.
It's getting good for sure. Something I thought though is kind of funny about the scene is that waiting room is full of parents, and presumably they don't know each other, right? Like most of the people at a doctor's office aren't going to know each other. It's going to be random strangers. And Homer comes in and immediately goes into like rage monster Homer mode and starts literally trying to attack a 10-year-old boy in an arm cast, mind you, and like screaming at him. And I'm just thinking like how terrifying that would be in real life. And in this situation, all we get is Dr. Hibbert being like, "Oh, wow, you sure did give that boy the heebie-jeebies."
But at the same time, if you're another parent and you heard somebody yelling at a 10-year-old child like, "You, homewrecker," there's a lot of other questions that start popping into
What does that mean?
Like, I don't blame them for not getting involved. It's just like, oh, damn.
Yeah.
I want to learn some lessons from this 10-year-old.
Wow.
I mean, if he got Marge, hell yeah. Good job, Martin.
Wow. So Bart is ready for the big race, and he wants Homer to come and support him. He goes and he gets one of the items we saw earlier from I Can't Believe It's on Television, which was the foam dome. He loads it full of 2 Duffs, and he's like, "Come on, Dad, I brought you your hat."
Which I love that they already throw back to the gag from earlier in the episode where Homer's been buying all that stuff.
Yeah, I love that too. That's it. That whole comeback or callback joke is fantastic.
It's just, again, it's very, very smart writing, and it's something other shows will start to use a lot. And I'm not saying The Simpsons are the first to do it, but they're definitely the ones to do it prominently.
So Simpsons kinda did it, I guess.
Simpsons perfected it.
Right on. Well, this is also where we see another just side of Homer's true selfishness when he's so engaged in his own feelings of being neglected by his son that he can't just put his pride on the side and go support him, which is what, would probably be the right choice. And Marge actually, for the first time, truly loses faith in Homer as a father.
But does she truly do it, or does she just know what to say?
That's a good point. It could have been her way of motivating him, but it seemed an awfully sincere moment to me. I don't know. But regardless, Homer didn't respond. He sat there and he was watching TV, sipping off his foam dome, and it was only when he needed a refill that he got inspired or motivated to become the father that he can be. And it was all because they had that test sitting on the fridge, and he happened to see it, and because of his recent encounters with Bart's friends, he knew that Martin was one of Bart's friends.
It's a great little scene where he's reading the questions out loud. He's like, "Name one of Bart's friends." He goes, "Martin."
Yeah, he knows him because of how much he loathes him right now, which makes it even more
knows him
interesting.
because he loathes him.
He goes on to the second question. What is one of Bart's hobbies? Of course, soapbox derby racing. That's the only thing he's been doing. Thirdly, we get to his idol, which we know from earlier was Ronnie Beck. And then the last question, Homer realizes that, as he puts it, he's got 3 questions down, and he's only 1 question away from becoming a perfect father. And that question is, name one other parent that you talk about parenting with.
Which I think he could have abstractly said Bill Cosby in there if he wanted to. And every time I see this episode, I always expect that. And I don't know why, but I guess I just always go...
It would be a somewhat funny joke, like, oh, Bill Cosby.
Like, count it.
Like, as if he has, like, a personal relationship with him. I could see that being funny. What we get is equally funny, though, or at least it's pretty damn funny, I'll say that. Flanders shows up in perfect timing in the window. Hey, neighborino! And at first, Homer dismisses him. Shut up, as Flanders. Usual, but immediately runs outside and is like, hey, Flanders, what age do you think is appropriate for a boy to start dating? Flanders replies, well, there's 2 schools of thought on this. And immediately Homer is like, all right, thanks, gotta go. Thanks, Flanders. Check. Counts. I'm a perfect dad. And for whatever reason, becoming a perfect dad inspires Homer to go to Bart to cheer him on at the boxcar derby race.
What I love is when we have the first scene at the boxcar race, it's Moe and Barney talking to Patty and Selma. And I didn't catch what Barney said to them because I was so intrigued with the stand that was right behind them. Did you see the stand that they were standing in front of?
No, what was it?
It was ice cream and beer. And I thought, I really want to either love this place or throw up after tasting this place.
Well, I guess it's beer for the adults and ice cream for the chillins.
But I just thought it was great that it's Moe and Barney that are standing in front of this place. So that means they were probably trying it, or Moe was trying to steal recipes from them, which he'll get really good at in the next episode.
Well, that's a good point. Oh, Barney also hits on Patty in this, or is it? I always forget if it's Patty or Selma that dates Barney all the time, but. Whichever it is, the one that looks like Mary Tyler Moore, Barney actually goes up to her and is like, hey, my friend and I have a bet. Are you Mary Tyler Moore? She pepper sprays him, and he, after he kind of recovers for a second, he's like, wow, it really is you.
Which, because he's drunk all the time, he forgets that he hits on them all the time, which, we all do that occasionally or all the time.
So I remember, well, I don't really remember is the thing, but I've been told many, many times that I was at a party once in college, and I know you were there, and apparently I went around the room in a big circle, and I literally just hit on every chick in the room, got turned down, and at one point I actually got back around in the circle and had forgotten that I had already hit on some of these girls and started over again.
I don't call that drunken stupidity. I call that fortitude. Patience.
Hey, I just, you know what, man? Shotgun hunting is the way to go sometimes. I may not have a perfect sniper shot, but you throw enough bait out there, or you throw enough shot out there, you might catch something.
Shotgun spread got you a wife.
Sorry, men are sluts. True story.
No, they aren't. Society dictates that only women can be sluts.
Yeah, well, I'm doing my part to earn the name, or was back then at least.
What I love is like Bart's even feeling a little bad right before he gets to the race, and Martin's giving him a pep talk, and he's like, I'm just worried about my dad laying around, drinking beer, watching TV.
I've never seen him like that.
Which is literally all he ever does.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah, that was great. I want to know what lax rules this soapbox derby racing league has in terms of Nelson being able to have metal spikes that tear into Bart's wooden cart on their race.
And he has a whip. He goes full Ben-Hur on Bart during this race.
He does go full Ben-Hur. And also while they're racing, they're kind of going back and forth for a second, and I love that it shows the speedometer on Bart's car, but then it rips off because it was just a sticker. I think it was at like 200 too. Yeah. Even if that's kilometers instead of miles, that's still pretty damn fast for a soapbox car. Robbie Beck ends up to be like a 7-year-old kid. He actually presents the trophy when Bart pulls across the finish line, and Bart is all just ecstatic, and this little tiny kid walks out, and Bart's all like, oh, thank you, sir. It's an honor.
He's a 3-time winner.
It's true. I guess age doesn't really matter, right? Homer and Bart are really celebrating, and Martin reminds them that he's the one that built the car, and drivers are essentially just ballast.
Nelson walks up and says, the better man won, Simpson. And then,
and extends his hand to shake Bart's hand.
And then the most beautiful, touching moment in the episode happens. Homer and Bart start rubbing in the fact that Nelson's a loser and they're winners.
And it's like, yeah, it's like the worst sportsmanship ever. Totally over the top. And I love Marge actually is like, Bart, there is such a thing as like being a good winner. And Bart tells her, "Mom, I've never won before. I may never win again." And then Homer and Bart go back to rubbing it in Nelson's face.
Bart calls it being a sore winner. And, Bart's absolutely right. If it's the only moment you're going to have, live it up, son.
I could say there's a way to live it up without being such a dick, but I'm with you. I guess if that's how you need to celebrate. But I mean, honestly, it kind of makes Nelson a more sympathetic character in a lot of ways.
Ha ho. Oh. But it's the most touching moment in the episode because Bart and Homer are actually bonding over this.
It's actually the first time that they've actually truly come together. I agree. That's really nice.
They're both doing it like father, but the whole episode they've been doing the exact same things without even realizing it. Like their banter and their back and forth in this episode is spot on. Where they're father and son.
There's a lot of mimicry of one another, and it's a really subtle but smart way they do it.
Exactly.
And as they're having this touching moment, the song "Wind Beneath My Wings" comes on, and they do a close-in on Homer and Bart hugging. And as they pan out, it actually shows that they're being watched by the parenting institute that Homer visited earlier, and the father and son scientist hug, and the credits roll. Aw,
people
cheer.
Man. A good end to an episode, as usual.
Yeah, I have to say, I know you said this was never one of your favorites. I actually have very fond memories of this one, and I still think this one holds up heavy. But was there anything that you or that book of yours wanted to point out that we missed?
It's the theme from The Natural that's playing when Bart looks up to the grandstand and sees that his dad has shown up. That's a movie moment for The Natural.
I think I completely forgot to mention the fact that Homer showed up, but obviously he did since they celebrated together.
That's just a small thing you might
just a tiny detail, yeah.
Also, the sign at the video store reads VHS Village, formerly the Beta Barn. So it's a changing with the times, like most rental places had to.
I guess it'll eventually become the DVD dungeon.
Oh, God.
Well, like I said, I don't have anything else to add on this one other than I think this was a great episode as a kid. I think it's a great episode now. I think it tells a touching story about the love between a father and son, even if it's not the Hallmark Disney-esque style of father-son relationship that you expect to see on TV. It still has some touching moments and a lot of humor. On that note, I think that's going to do it for Saturdays of Thunder. We still have Flaming Moe's to talk about. Awesome episode.
Let's all go to Flaming Moe's.
Before we get to Flaming Moe's, however, let's check in with our Podern family.
Hi, I'm Ocho.
And I'm Ortiz.
And together we make up East York's #1 wrestling podcast, the Ocho and Ortiz Wrestling Podcast.
That's right. And we mostly talk about the independents here in Toronto, the WWE, and on occasion, the UFC.
So if you like wrestling, or if you're an occasional mixed martial art fan, be sure to give us a listen. We're available on iTunes, on Stitcher, on Podbean at ochoandortiz.podbean.com, and you can find us on YouTube, where we post live videos from events that we attend. You can also visit our WordPress website, ochoandortiz.wordpress.com. The Ocho and Ortiz Wrestling Podcast, East York's #1 wrestling podcast.
Alright everyone, unfortunately we are going to have to cut this episode right here due to some scheduling conflicts on our end. Sorry about the inconvenience. We'll get back to our 2-episode format soon. We will be back with the conclusion of this conversation discussing fan favorite episode Flaming Moe's next week. Also, I want to remind everyone that this month only, in just the month of February, PopThreads.com, our sponsor, is giving us a special promotion. Usually the code Simpsons will save you 10% at checkout. This month only, when you use the discount code Simpsons at checkout, you're going to get 20% off your order. So take advantage. Great company, $3.99 flat shipping anywhere, and they have tons of awesome shirts available. So give them a look. As usual, follow our show at Best Darn Diddly. You can find me at MrMostDaysOff, and you can follow Richie the WizKid at TheWiz_Kid23. We look forward to having all of you back next week for the conclusion of this Best Darn Diddly review show.